Seriously. Yes, we did. I like that. I remember. And I'm sure it's not the same. You'll find out.
Good morning. I'm Barbara Castellano-Stasiak, your service associate today, and I welcome you to our Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, where we covenant to weave together the strands of our separate lives. We are an inclusive, welcoming congregation, whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, here in this room or at home, you are welcome here.
Good morning. I am Joel Miller. I'm the interim minister here at the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. So glad to welcome you here this morning. We've got so many interesting things going on here at the fellowship. So next Sunday after the second service at 12:45, we have an Odyssey. And I encourage you to check in the church calendar, the fellowship calendar, excuse me. I still make that term error every now and then. Also, then next Saturday is the kickoff of the services auction. If you buy your ticket today to go to the Saturday event, it's only $15. If you buy it after today it's $20. So if you want to save $5, now's the time. I'm looking forward to it because Barbara was telling me that there's going to be lots of samples of the food that's there to be bid on. So, and I hear the food's really good, so I'm excited about that. And if you're able, there's beer and wine. I guess it's going to be there as well. So that should be a really fun time, 6 p.m. on Saturday. And all kinds of things to bid on. Did I hear there's 90 submissions?
Oh, 130.
What? 130? I don't think I could possibly bid on all the dinners there must be to bid on.
Sure you could. You could spend your next month's salary.
And then this afternoon at 2, trunk or treat out in the parking lot. And I'm really looking forward to our Halloween celebration this afternoon. That's going to be really great fun. When I was a parent of 2 young children, Halloween started taking on new meaning for me, especially when my daughter, I don't think she was even maybe 2.5, and I found this cute little costume, and I dressed her up as a ladybug, red makeup on her face, this cute little antenna on springs, yeah. And I stayed home, and I doled out the candy as the kids would come and say trick or treat. And their mom took them around the neighborhood to ring doorbells and say trick or treat. My 2.5-year-old daughter this was her first time experiencing that and understanding what was going on. Like, you push the doorbell, you say trick or treat, and you get candy. And when they got back from trick or treating, my daughter ran up the stairs of the porch, ran up to the door and said, Daddy, I'm a ladybug. Give me chocolate. She was just buzzing with the sugar and the excitement, how this worked. Interesting, because here she was, sort of in a costume and masked, so to speak, and yet she was completely unmasked in this situation. That thing sugar does to you, your biochemistry of our brains. I'm thinking a lot about masks and their role in our lives, our experience of what it means to be wearing the clothes we wear, having the faces we have. It's good to be with you here this morning at this time of year. We light our chalice this morning Worship Associate, Barbara Stasiak, and I invite you to recite the words of the affirmation along with me as we light our chalice this morning. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our Time for All Ages is also our hymn this morning, so our interim music director is going to get us started, I think.
So how many people can snack? And some people, lots of kids can't snack, but lots of adults can't snack either. So if you can't snack, can you go? Yeah, you can do that. Great. And you'll recognize the tune because you're all of a certain age.
Milestones and passages, there are many today. We gather in community as the course of our lives brings us through difficult passages, transformations, important moments. It's in this service, the ritual of sharing is a reminder of what we aspire to in creating community. We have many milestone candles this morning. First candle is for the husband of Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of our House, who was attacked by a right-wing terrorist yesterday. Candle is for him, his family, for us and our democracy. A candle for 150 people who died in South Korea yesterday. As a crowd had a panic and people were crushed in it. A candle for Tom McGinnis, who is doing better. There's an address for where he is. He would love cards. If you send him a card, you can find it in the online order of service. We'll publish it also on Wednesday in the e-news. A candle for Steve Rice and his family. His older brother passed away earlier this month. The family is having a celebration of life next weekend in Pennsylvania. A candle for John Minahan, a member of this congregation for 15 years. He died this week. He was active in the men's group and connected deeply in this congregation. A candle for Sharon Glickman, whose memorial was also here yesterday. We celebrated her life and her presence in this congregation and supported her partner, Anne, who survives her and is active here. And a number of friends are very excited to share. Congratulations are in order for Franklin Heller. Tomorrow, he's retiring. Congratulations, Frank. There are many other milestones, joys, sorrows, experiences that we share silently, quietly. They're here. We acknowledge them, even if they're unspoken. As the season and its days become shorter in light and longer in darkness, what does it mean to be a people who live in darkness? What can darkness be for us? Perhaps it can be a womb of the world, a place of growth where the darkness and the warmth become a canvas for who we are becoming. Can it be a place where we bring our very lives and discover our possibilities? Here we are, beings of the earth. Food and earth have become our bodies, and our bodies hold memories, hold experiences, life of the past, connections that have shaped us, questions that lead us into the days to come. All of this frames our life. And we see it as it flows forth from within. Joys bring smiles to our faces. Sorrows bring sighs or tears. And these flow across our human landscape, our faces, even as rivers flow across the earth. Every moment that we live, we prepare ourselves for life. We may have hands, may have ears, eyes, noses, tongues, touching, tasting, hearing, feeling, seeing. And even if we lack any of these, we always have within us imagination, building worlds unto themselves. Building, and from that flows our life, experiences from coming within and flowing without. What shall we build that will flow out of us? How shall we shape these streams of life? Let us make within ourselves channels of compassion. Let us paint within ourselves canvases of fairness, of love. Let our bodies be reshaped into bodies that live what is just, what is fair, what is beautiful. So that as we turn our faces to one another and to our world, the world knows joy, truth, peace, justice, hope. And now in these moments of silence, may all that is flowing through us flow toward a day in which that peace, that joy, that justice, that hope comes to life. May our worship and our minds be filled with this love, this peace. Amen. So be it. Blessed be. I invite you to sing with me now. It'll be on the screen, or if you'd like to use the hymn books, it's number 83. Winds Be Still. I invite you to stand in spirit or in body as you would like. This reading today was written by an African-American poet, Paul Laurence Dunbar. I encountered this poem only about 15 years ago, and I was a bit stunned when I first read it, and it's come back to me again and again. Now, the poem is over 100 years old at this point, so some of the language and even some of the theology is probably somewhat might make us feel uncomfortable. I know it does me. Part of the reason I find myself uncomfortable is knowing the history that Paul Laurence Dunbar lived. He grew up in Dayton, Ohio, not far from where I grew up, Columbus, Ohio. And he went to high school, and he was the only black person in the building in his high school. He was allowed to go to the school, and he was allowed to graduate. Seems remarkable to have to say that from a pulpit. Then he was even able to go to a community college in Dayton. And he became a poet, and he wrote a lot of poetry, and his poetry was published. Not only published for black folks, but for white folks too. He had sponsors. But people who are poets don't usually make their living as poets, and certainly Paul Laurence Dunbar couldn't do that. He actually had to work running an elevator in a department store in downtown Dayton, Ohio. I'm old enough that I remember when I was a child in Ohio and going downtown to the department store there, black men ran the elevators until automated buttons were put in. Paul Laurence Dunbar was allowed to sell books of his poetry as he operated the elevator. I'm sure that would never have happened in Columbus, Ohio. This is a poem entitled "We Wear the Mask." I would, for any of us who are black folks who are African American, I know that this might bring some discomfort as I read it, and it is my hope that in the reading of it in a worship service that we are transforming ourselves so that the masks that we do wear for one another are worn out of perhaps joy or love of others rather than out of fear and the need to survive. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes, this debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile. But, oh, great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing. But, oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and along the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask.
Our offering today will be shared 50-50 with Norwest Cap, an agency in northwestern New Jersey that empowers people to move away from the crisis of poverty and towards a future where they can thrive. So please be generous as our ushers pass the baskets among you, or if you give online at muuf.org/give. As we listen to Beth playing the graveyard theme from It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
There's an aspect of myself that I keep masked most of the time. It gets unmasked, usually in moments like the moment I was reading about the right-wing terrorist attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband in San Francisco. I'm not proud of this. In fact, I'm grateful to Unitarian Universalism. I'm grateful to you that I know better than to indulge what comes out when I hear that, which is to respond in kind. Even the anger I feel as I'm sharing that with you is strong. And I know two things. One, that I would do nothing good by indulging in that series of feelings, these thoughts. And the other is that I aspire to be something better than that, much better than that. And that's what I get from you as Unitarian Universalists, in community especially. And most of the time that's masked. And I have no desire to share it. It's not necessary. I share it with you now as I'm thinking about trick-or-treating and masks and Halloween. I've kind of missed trick-or-treating. The last place I lived in Indianapolis, I was in an apartment building, and there were no trick-or-treaters in the complex where I lived. I realized, I was reminded just yesterday that it's possible I have some trick-or-treaters tonight. I actually wasn't really sure about it. And I thought, oh my gosh, if somebody comes to my door tonight, I will be home. I'm in an apartment complex, so I don't know, but I got some candy anyway. I'd be happy if I gave the candy out, because actually I don't want it to sit there because I'm afraid I'll eat it. And actually, Beth recommended at the last service, maybe I could just bring it to the fellowship for coffee hour next week or something. So I think I'll do that. Reese's peanut butter cups, because I love it. Yeah, right? So I've always loved Halloween. I love the depth, the layers of meaning within it. Masks, that way of playing with things that are frightening, the way in which I would get to know some of my neighbors and their kids when they did come to my door for Halloween. You know, the custom from going house to house in masks, sometimes even costumes, arrived with Scottish and Irish immigrants in the 1800s. These customs were still just tenuously hanging on in the distant parts of Ireland and Scotland. And actually, when these immigrants came to the United States, the tradition died in Ireland and Scotland completely and came to life here. Ironically, now that it's a big part of a lot of culture in the United States, it started to make its way as a custom back into Europe, or even into Korea, where there was a big Halloween party, and the tragedy happened there. There are ancient records that describe these customs too. Customs of people wearing masks, lighting candles in vegetables. They may not have called them pumpkins, but they were carving openings in vegetables and walking around to their neighbors begging treats. It was part of an ancient Celtic holiday called Samhain. Samhain's still a word in use in Irish Gaelic, and it names this time of year. It was the New Year celebration for the ancient Celts. The New Year was a time when the boundary between this life and the afterlife was thinnest, sometimes even opened. And part of the purpose of wearing masks was either to frighten those departed family or ancestors who were still hanging out in this world to go ahead and move on to the next world. Or maybe they were wearing masks in order to confuse those folks. They might be looking for us saying, I'm supposed to be home, I'm supposed to be home. No. homes over there, and they couldn't find who they were looking for. The lanterns that were made out of gourds were part of lighting the way to where they were needed to be going. Bonfires at those places where the boundary between the worlds was thinnest to guide them there. Such interesting roots, and even 3 years ago, if I was wanting to think about what masks could mean and research them, I could put into an online search masks, and I would get hundreds of hits on Halloween. Now, if I put in the word mask, I get hundreds of hits about N95 masks for sale. Halloween doesn't show up in the first 100 results for me. Masks have a whole new meaning. And it's striking to me that even in the worst months of the pandemic, a year and a half ago, a year ago, at best, only half of Americans wore a mask when they went out. A mask around to filter what they breathed in and what they breathed out. Epidemiologists estimated that if 95% of Americans had worn masks a year ago, 18 months ago, instead of half of us, we would have saved 500,000 lives. 500,000 lives. But being unmasked, or masked even, has become a kind of political statement. A symbol of freedom for some, that they don't have to be masked. Really? What the hell freedom is in that? I don't understand this. What is this freedom they're talking about? We give each other freedom by being masked, is my sense. We give each other better odds of being free from COVID. It sounds like a pretty good freedom to me. And why? How is it good that we wear a symbol of freedom that's not freedom, and the symbol costs us 500,000 lives? I mean, I don't want to wear a mask any more than anybody else does. It makes my nose break out, and I look like Santa Claus or something. Or even worse, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The reality is that the whole political thing around masks has unmasked something that's always been there. It's unmasked something perhaps similar to what I shared to you when I began sharing this sermon. Something that's something that can do harm and not good. Something that doesn't heal the world or bless the world. I think that's one of the reasons when Halloween comes, we have this holy day, in which we play with symbols and we play with even ideas like death. We have skeletons in grocery stores that I go to filled with skeletons, cardboard skeletons, pictures of black cats and skulls and masks. And somehow children get through it high on sugar and being playful with it. But they're learning also the ancient power of masks, the metaphor of masking. And what does that metaphor represent? I think of my daughter, who, as she grew, began wearing different kinds of costumes, ones that would make her feel powerful. A girl in a chaotic world who puts on a Wonder Woman costume, and for a day, she's a superhero and has great power in a dangerous world. I think of those children who would come to my door trick-or-treating, and they'd be wearing all kinds of costumes from the Harry Potter novels. They know difficult journeys are ahead, and they're putting on some courage, the kind of courage they see in the characters. I think of those straight cisgendered boys, those boys in high school, my own son, boys even now who are close to being men, so close, and they live in this world in which they too have impossible expectations put upon them. On Halloween, those boys might dress as a girl, and they can imagine in those moments having the same emotional freedom that we give to girls and to women. We're all wearing masks and costumes every day. I'm wearing a suit jacket and pants that I got recently, and when I come to the fellowship and it's for a service, I want to look good. I want to be dressed in a way that this costume says to you, I'm really glad to be here, and I honor the importance of this moment. It's a costume, but the meaning that comes with it, I quite mean it. It's important to me, and I forget that meaning sometimes. But I wouldn't come on a Sunday without my jacket and tie. Although I have to confess, when I was in Oregon, I went up one Sunday to start preaching, and the president of the congregation came up and started to take my tie off. And I was like, you don't need that here. So when I'd been in Buffalo, New York, which is where I'd been before, I wore a tie, and I was a little edgy because the ties I wore were kind of groovy and tie-dyed, and I was edgy because I was wearing not very traditional ties. Then I went to Oregon, and I'm wearing ties, and I was edgy just because I was wearing a tie. I remember how important it is, costumes, masks, the costuming, the mask we wear, the clothing we wear. Usually, I remember this most vividly when I go to the grocery store on my day off. And so on my day off, I'm usually dressed in a hoodie and some old jeans and old black T-shirt. And I'll be shopping, and I might run into somebody at the grocery store, and I'll go, I know them, and they're looking at me, oh, Reverend Joel, how are you doing? Okay. I'm trying to put the two different places in my brain together and get the name and everything and figure out the, I know that guy look I'm seeing. It's somebody looking at me. You know, scientists can actually measure what is happening in a moment like that. There's a part of my brain that where the neurons get really wired around congregational life, so life at fellowship. And then there's another part of my brain which is wired around grocery shopping. I like to grocery shop. It's fun for me. And what am I going to cook? And, ooh, the vegetables look great today. And the two don't overlap generally very much. So when those moments come that they overlap, I have that dazed look on my face, and I'm totally unmasked, my confusion completely obvious. But you can measure, if someone were to do a brain scan, they could see these different parts of my brain lighting up and probably even measure the confusion going on in my head. A mask can be a metaphor, but a metaphor isn't necessarily a fiction. Even our bodies are shaped by the masks we wear. That poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar unmasks an important reality, a reality that Black people still endure in the United States, perhaps not as harsh, maybe I can't even say that, maybe not as obvious as it used to be. Paul Laurence Dunbar was the first nationally known Black poet in the United States. Think about what it means to, in those days, in Columbus, Ohio, I remember the first time I experienced when the man who rented a storefront from my father would come in to pay the rent. I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and he was deferential to me in a way that I did not understand. And only later came to understand was he did that because had he done differently, he feared he would die at the hands of racists. It was hard when I finally read this poem and understood that. made me angry. It made me feel a sense of shame. These lines, we wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheek and shades our eyes. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile. And why should the world count all our tears and cries? And the thing that grieves my heart is that this still describes this country for black folks. For black folks, though, today, we probably wouldn't understand it with the term mask, a mask. In fact, what I would encourage you to do, if you haven't heard this term, code switching, if you don't know what code switching is, I encourage you to go on to National Public Radio's website. There's a podcast called Code Switch. There's a lot to learn from listening to it. 125 years ago, a black person needed to put on a mask of contentment for white people. And if they didn't, they risked being killed for it. And black people still have to do it when they engage with police officers. And you'll notice that, well, you might not notice, but my experience is that a lot of black folks, if they're very much embedded in black community, black American community, when they're not in that community, they sound white. They code switch so that we are comfortable, those of us who are white. But a lot of black people, not all black people, live in communities that are distinctly and beautifully black. This amazing black American culture that brought us so many gifts. And the code switching becomes so obvious. If you've ever had the privilege to be in the home of black friends or black folks, or be at a social event that's in the black community, and to see the folks there not code switching for my comfort or your comfort, but just being themselves, speaking and laughing and joking with each other as they do when they're at home. And you know you're in one of those moments if you're not from that community, because suddenly you really have to pay attention to what's being said, because it will be really easy to miss it. And there's a joy and an energy that's just so very different. The masks have come off. The code switching is not happening. And those few times I've had that experience, I can tell you, it's been a big privilege, a great privilege. Too rare, but I treasure the moments I've had that experience. Zen Buddhism has a spiritual practice of what's called koans. A koan is a paradoxical question, and the question is meant to show the inadequacy of logical reasoning and to encourage enlightenment. One of my favorite Zen koans is this question: show me your original face before you were born. I think of my daughter's first Halloween and her innocent, joyful face smeared with chocolate. Daddy, I'm a lightning bug. Give me chocolate. This original joy, the biochemical buzz of sugar, the joy of seeing neighbors, her soul was unmasked in that moment, and the way sugar was interacting with her body. But this koan, show me your original face before you were born, is it really about a child's face? Could we ask, as another follow-up question maybe, what is your original identity? Masks can be used to disguise. There are aspects of myself I'd prefer not to share with folks. As children, for example, I remember helping my children learn to act like they were glad to share a toy with a friend, even when they were truly annoyed by it. I'm not so good at masks that I'm a good poker player. If I get a straight flush or a royal flush, there's no way I'm going to bluff my way around that. Everybody folds. Oh, look at Joel's face. We're done. We're out. Black folks learn to mask with a kind of whiteness around white folks. Queer folks in red state America or Africa or Asia survive by wearing the mask of heterosexuality. I have a child who, for years, wore a mask of a gender, even though in their heart of hearts they were a non-binary person, just who they are. So we sometimes use masks to protect ourselves or even to protect others. Masks can transform us too. They can be powerful. There are parts of us that are unformed, vulnerable, parts of us that aren't ready yet to face the world. The Zuni people of New Mexico say that masks have a power that is beautiful and dangerous. In many cultures in the world, especially in Africa and the American Southwest, masks can hold the presence of something very different than our humanity, perhaps the presence of a god, maybe of a demon, or a universal experience, something that transcends the individuality of the person who wears a mask. So in the American Southwest, for example, the Zuni people and other peoples who live there often have on certain holidays traditions of dancers who will wear a mask and at certain times during a holiday will come out and do a dance and a series of rituals masked. And young children don't know that who the people are wearing the masks. Sometimes they see the masks and think that the masked beings are the beings themselves. And there is actually a ritual that then happens with the children when they reach an age of about 8, 9, 10 years old, where there will be a moment when they are taken to meet the masked beings. The masks are removed and they see that it's an uncle or a neighbor, perhaps even a brother, who's been wearing the mask. The mask still has its power, but the mask isn't necessarily the person wearing the mask is not fully identified with the mask. If you ever find yourself, by the way, in a culture where masks are beautiful and dangerous, never touch the mask, much less put it on your face. It's at the very least rude. In Zuni culture, it would be a very dangerous thing to do. There was a movie, I think it was with Jim Carrey, where I think the name of the movie was Mask, and he found this mask, and there was a god that was somehow in the mask, and he put the mask on, and then this god Loki would come out, and things would get chaotic. In fact, there was in ancient Norse culture an understanding that if you put on the mask of a god or a demon, you took on the presence of that spirit. And you had to have a very special skill in order to wear a mask like that and then be able to take it off and return to yourself. The power of masks became clearest to me in the way that we live with them as spiritual beings. Not just masks, but costumes, rituals, even like this. What do we create? What presence do we create with one another when we gather? How do we provide an opportunity to care for what is vulnerable and growing in us? How do we create a setting in which we protect one another from aspects of ourselves that don't need to be shared? It was the day of a wedding. I did many weddings as a younger minister. These days, anybody can go online, get an ordination by paying $5 to Universal Life Church, I think it is. I haven't done a wedding in years at this point, which is fine. The only weddings I really like doing are people I know in a congregation I serve. But there was a time I did many, In one congregation in particular that had a very beautiful sanctuary, I did many weddings, and this one particular wedding was very fancy. There was a wedding coordinator helping us with all of it. It was so complicated, a wedding. Flowers everywhere, dresses and flowers, bouquets, all meant to match and to look beautiful. There was a photographer. There were several photographers. There was a videographer. There was there were limos. We had a rehearsal the Friday night before the wedding, which was on a Saturday. And we had to have an almost military precision to get this thing pulled off so that it would just kind of flow and everybody would hopefully be reasonably relaxed. That was my hope. Usually, rehearsal would take maybe an hour, and a good half of that was just people getting to know each other because often families were meeting other parts of their new families for the first time. This was a 2-hour rehearsal. I mean, it was something. And then the bride's dress, when she came down the aisle, we'd had to rehearse this carefully. Her dress, long train came off the back. Cathedral-length train, I think it was called. And so we had to rehearse with the bridesmaids how to, when the bride came up and was at the altar, how to drape this long cathedral-length train just away so that it looked good, so that nobody stepped on it, it didn't get dirty. So we rehearsed it. Especially we didn't want Dad to step on the dress. That would have been awkward. And, well, everything had been going just as it needed to go. She came down the aisle that Saturday. I should mention that not only was the train very long, but the dress was strapless. Right? So, yes, the worst happened, and Dad stepped on the train. There she was in her beauty and glory. And the bridesmaids immediately surrounded her and got her, we're getting the bride all back dressed appropriately. And everybody was at first shocked and sat there like, what do we do? And the father became inconsolable. He just was, he wept that he'd ruined his daughter's beautiful big day. With everything unmasked, with the formality, the moment stripped of its formalities, its rituals, its structures. The reality of this wedding was revealed. The bride, having been put back together by her bridesmaids, immediately went to her father, grabbed him, and loudly said, "Daddy, it's okay. It's all on videotape. We're going to be laughing the rest of our lives." What was behind the costuming, the masking, the ritualing was a family whose love was unmistakable. A couple getting married because they loved each other and wanted to be together as a family. And two families there supporting them, loving them. These, I think, are the moments we long for and try to recreate in congregational life. Moments when we can try on new masks, new ways of doing things, and we're surrounded by friends, people who support us. And those sacred moments when we find our masks have come off, our hearts are revealed, and we see each other in a fullness perhaps we would rarely show others. And we're held in safety and respect by friends. We might be doing this especially with these things we call our beliefs. As Unitarian Universalists, we all have beliefs. Sometimes we find beliefs are trying us on or we're trying them on. We don't really let each other believe whatever we want. When we get accused of that, that's absurd. Of course we don't. But we're trying to figure them out. How are we going to use these beliefs to live well in the world? to bless the lives of other people, to heal the world, to make it a better place, to transform suffering. This heart of our gathering is community, a place where we can use the power of what is revealed and what is masked. When we can unmask in a way that's safe for self and others what we hold most dear, reveal to one another what we love with trembling hearts. It's our good service to gently hold the revelations we offer, to listen deeply to the truths we hear in return, perhaps the recommendations we not reveal so much sometimes. And the spiritual path we share, the world needs it. We can become an example for the world around us, because by sharing the good within ourselves and sharing the way in which we shape that which is difficult, we can provide the world an example of how we live for a common good and how we serve for a greater good and can be transformed by the unexpected and the unknown. I'd like to invite you to sing with me. This song I first heard because I bought some music on cassette tapes by a guy named Raffi. Like Wheels on the Bus was one of the songs I'd sing. We like to eat apples and bananas, and then we'd play with the vowels in that. This song predates Raffi, actually. It's a wonderful song. Do when the Spirit says. And I invite you to stand in body or spirit. The words are here on the screen, or you can look at the words in number 1024 in the Teal book. presidents was saying, don't say boo, say vote. Yeah, can we do that? Vote.
I saw it, I
Vote.
saw it.
All right, all right. Indulge me.
1, 2, sing.
To sing with. Thank you. Thank you. Go into the world now knowing that the light of community is here. And when ours seems to have gone out or is hard to find, we can be here again, find it or relight it with one another in a place that aspires to joy, to peace, and to justice for all. Go in peace, be in peace. See you again soon.